There's always that one or two movies you watch every year around the wintertime. People have Home Alone, or A Christmas Story, or anything from Rankin Bass, or Eight Crazy Nights if you like torture, and then the modern classics like Arthur Christmas and Klaus. But there's one movie that stands out to me as my favorite of the batch, and one I watch at least twice during December, and that movie is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's so damn funny and chaotic in every aspect, and I love it so much. Alright, but seriously, one movie that is also a standout during this time is a little movie that has earned the hearts of millions for the last 22 years. That movie is the holiday comedy, Elf. This has been a video I had on the backboard since 2021, and I forgot about it for a good while. Back when Ed Asner was the only cast member of the film to have passed away. Since then, we have lost both James Caan and Bob Newhart as well. Little disclaimer here, I did not know his last name was pronounced as Khan and not Can. This wouldn't be the first time I'm going to be saying his name like Can, I'm just letting you know now. So why not bring out my metaphorical AED and revive the project? Yes, it took a whole year to get to a second ALBO episode because I didn't anticipate how long the Smash Ultimate Victory theme ranking was going to take to make. So my question that comes up is it still a good movie after all these years? Well, it depends on who you ask, but let's start from the top. But I'm not going to go as much into the plot as my 8 Crazy Nights video because that wound up being released way later than its intended release date. So let's breeze through a good amount of the plot, but also talk about some standouts and bullet points worth mentioning, not to mention all this stuff that I either really like or really don't like. Major spoilers for the movie ahead. We start the movie off with some wonderful title cards, and we get both a stacked cast and a surprising director. Crazy how the director of this movie is Jon freaking Favreau of all things. This is the same man who directed Iron Man and was the showrunner for The Mandalorian. And in terms of the cast, we have Will Ferrell, James Caan, Zooey Deschanel, Ed Asner, Bob Newhart, and even some minor roles played by Bebe's Kids star Faison Love, Peter Dinklage, and, like some of his other projects, John got to star in it as well. We begin with a narrator telling the audience about how a baby at an orphanage would accidentally get carried away by Santa and taken to the North Pole. This is Papa Elf, the man who decided to adopt the human child as his own. The elves named the child Buddy after noting the brand on his diaper with the same name. By the way, I can't imagine raising a child like Buddy. Like, imagine raising a baby who is this huge compared to you. And Papa Elf gets double, if not triple points for being the only elf who saw Buddy as his own person, while the other elves see him as either the special one or the challenging detriment who doesn't cut it as an elf. Speaking of, he somehow didn't know until overhearing a couple of elves that he is a human, and this man's like 30, I don't know how he didn't figure that out. Even Leon points out how obvious this was.
Not an elf.
Of course you're not. You're 6'3" and had a beard since you were 15.
Speaking of, a huge compliment I'd like to get out of the way is that I love the set design of this movie so much. Making everything up to scale to where Buddy and Santa seem huge, and especially the practical effects, which sell the illusion of the height difference and how Buddy interacts with the elves. And I also love how the North Pole is also built like a Rankin Bass stop motion special. These character designs are wonderful, and I'm sure people would try and say that these stop-motion characters are pointless, but I think it further sells how festive and whimsical the North Pole really is. And the set designers also really sell that wintry landscape with that same stop-motion feel, with the only CGI element being the snow falling down. And on top of that, I have to give major props to the score by John Debney, who makes that already established holiday feel way more prominent. Which, that name seems familiar. Where have I heard that name before? Oh my god, he did the score for The Emperor's New Groove! And this wouldn't be the last time Debney worked on a score with Jon Favreau. Cutting back to the story, Papa Elf eventually tells Buddy about his real dad and how he fell in love and fathered a kid that he wasn't told about. By the way, I read up on an article called 10 Harsh Realities Watching Elf Now, and the article writer points out how it's a plot hole that Papa Elf knows about Buddy's parents because how would he have known that? Which my response is, well, I don't know, the fact that he knows Santa? When his biological parents split up, his biological mother, Susan Wells, eventually would have Buddy and put him up for adoption. He was then told his dad worked in the Empire State Building, and Buddy made it his goal to find him. And also, as he was about to leave, Santa gave Buddy the news that his dad...
He's on the naughty list.
The reason why is that his dad, Walter Hobbs, is the vice principal of a publishing company who's both selfish and would care more about work than his family. After Buddy says his goodbyes to his little animal friends, he is met by my favorite character of the movie.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thanks, Mr. Narwhal.
When I was a kid, I always had a smile on my face seeing Mr. Narwhal. And surprise, surprise, he is also played by Jon Favreau himself. You think I forgot about that segment when discussing the actors early, but nope, I remember. I just wanted to surprise those who didn't know. After fighting off a raccoon, Buddy finds himself in New York City. And I will have to point out a critique with the movie that, honestly, the comedy is kind of a mixed bag. In that stretch between the raccoon and eventually him meeting his dad, it's practically a coin flip if the joke will land. My favorite jokes in that span would have to be him fighting off the raccoon, having fun with a spinning door, then later puking just to go back to it, him constantly taking flyers over and over and over again, eventually pissing off the people handing them out, and of course the moment where he presses all the buttons in the elevator, not knowing all the misfortune he put that poor man through. I pray for this level of patience. And my least favorites would have to be him chewing up the already chewed up gum, the world's best cup of coffee bit, and him singing to his dad, which was actually pretty cringy, I'm gonna be honest, ugh. And this is where we get their dynamic, where Buddy, while well-intentioned, definitely does not know how to interact with people, especially breaking so many boundaries. I get flashbacks of my job, and I genuinely flinch whenever he gets dangerously close to somebody. No surprise that when you spout how you're the VP's son and break boundaries like nobody's business, Buddy gets kicked out and finds out about Gimbals from one of the security guards and starts heading towards him. Okay, this is my favorite joke of the movie. The timing was just so perfect. I don't know how I was going to organically cut to that. When we get to Gimbals, again, the mix of good and not good jokes continue. Like, of course, the best bit of him was that huge split on the escalator. And I'm not really a big fan of the fruit spray scene. And again, the huge boundary breaking moments are just not my thing. And this one goes way over the top because he just stands right over somebody else's stall. Like, dude. He's eventually mistaken for a worker at Gimbals and was introduced to the North Pole segment of the building where his boss, named Wanda, announces that Santa is coming, which of course leads to...
Oh my God!
And again, Buddy's boundary problems occurs more when Jovi comes to the picture, who's an employee at Gimbals, who basically is an opposite to Buddy, where she's a lot more cynical and just wants to get the holiday over with, rather than embrace it. The scene with him talking to her about singing in public, and her clearly wanting to walk away was so genuinely uncomfortable. Like, obviously this makes sense for Buddy because he was never taught how to, leave anybody alone. That still doesn't change the fact that you gotta feel bad for her. After the store closes, Buddy stays up overnight and embraces his elf side by fully decorating the store, anticipating Santa's arrival. And it's crazy to think about that he was way behind his fellow elves in toy production. Why didn't they just have him be the interior designer? Because he's clearly a master of his craft. Oh, and I was not ready to talk about this scene. So let's just rip the bandage off. He walks in on Jovi while she's showering. Technically, he was lured in by her singing, and he was on the bathroom counter the entire time, but wow. I know he gets arrested later in the movie, but I'm surprised that this didn't get him arrested, let alone on some damn registry. And the salt in the open wound is that the song they sing is Baby It's Cold Outside. Like, you can't get more ugh than that. What's crazier is how quickly this was resolved. Like, okay, you called him out, but you definitely should have been tougher. But I guess she figured out at this point that he doesn't know better. And he complimented her singing anyway, so I guess that won her over. Yeah, okay, sure. The day comes and the mall Santa shows up at Gimbals. And of course, since Buddy knows Santa, he knows he's an impersonator. Which leads to Buddy ripping the fake beard off him and the mall Santa tackling and fighting Buddy, and even threatening Buddy with a pipe. And while the boss of the place has been pretty tough on both Buddy and Jovi, give this man props for coming in clutch and taking down the mall Santa. Cut back to Walter, where he gets a present, which of course I was going to highlight, and a card from Buddy, which makes him realize Buddy may have been telling the truth, as the card also included a picture of him and his former girlfriend, which mirrors the one in his high school yearbook, which follows with him getting a call from Buddy that he did in fact get arrested, even though the mall Santa should have been there too, but I digress. After bailing him out, he went to the doctors to verify that he is indeed his son, and surprise, surprise, Buddy was in fact a Hobbs boy. I can't neglect to mention that Jon Favreau was the doctor. Calling back to the mall scene, Buddy, when he gets invited into the Hobbs house, completely decks it out with decorations. and tells his family about his journey to get to New York. The next day, a couple more great jokes come into play, like this.
Did you sleep okay last night?
Great. I got a full 40 minutes.
Which actually should have been the big reason as to how he acts, because how can a human function with that little sleep a week? After some of Walter's work struggles, we get to Buddy interacting with Michael, the son of the Hobbs family. After a very brief moment of anger, it signals fellow school children for a snowball fight. And I think this will always be my favorite scene of the movie. Just Buddy firing snowballs at a rapid pace, and the editing works wonders. And while the snowballs are CGI, it's used to great lengths, and the acting helps out a ton to sell that the snowballs are actually hitting. Because of their bonding, it leads to Buddy coming back to Gimbals alongside Michael, where Buddy learns two things. Where Buddy finds out about Walter's selfish side, and where Buddy meets up with Jovi again, and with Michael's help, successfully asks her out. Also, I just love how Wanda filled in for Santa. As they head back to the apartment, while Buddy and Michael set up the tree, Walter and his wife discuss about both how Walter is definitely more absent in Michael's life, and how he would have to take Buddy to work. And it's pretty nice how well he works off Walter's colleagues. But since Buddy is Buddy and interferes with Walter's work, Walter coaxes Buddy into the mailroom where he befriends and gets drunk with a worker there after mistaking the worker's flasks with a canister of syrup and pouring it in his coffee, which riles up the entire mailroom. That night, it was Buddy and Jovi's date, which went surprisingly well, showing her everything that he loved when first going into the city. One thing I neglected to mention is that while Buddy was in the mailroom, his dad was on a phone call with a prominent children's writer, Miles Finch. And of course, as soon as we find out that Finch is played by Peter Dinklage, we know what Buddy's about to think. Yes, he mistakes Finch for an elf, and he gets the crap beaten out of him once more, which concludes with both Finch leaving and Walter yelling and disowning him, which makes Buddy leave both the building as well as his family. Yes, it's your typical third act split up, which, yeah, I gotta get this off my chest. The story is far from an original plot. An orphan who doesn't belong, who goes to the big city to find their parent, is a trope that has been done to death a bunch of times. And that would apply to a lot of the characters. With Buddy being a typical fish out of water protagonist, his dad being the work first parent that is in so many movies, especially holiday movies, while Jovi and Buddy's family on the surface are pretty one note. However, that's only in concept. This is a great example of a movie working with admittedly dull tropes and executing them well. It especially shines through the casting where everybody, you just can't see anybody else playing these roles. Will Ferrell's performance may be considered split by some people, but I think he does a really good job. Yes, he's a bit grating at times, but he does mix that innocent charm and high energy in such an organic way that you'll forgive him for being a little too much. James Caan also works within his limitations of his character to great lengths to sell everything well. Ed Asner's actually a pretty good Santa. I appreciate the writers going in a more realistic angle, and Ed nails that part. Bob Newhart could not have been more perfect as Papa Elf, able to organically mix his wise and caring demeanor with a straightforward way of talking to Buddy without talking down to him. While Zooey Deschanel, Jon Favreau, and Peter Dinklage, as well as a bunch of others, do well on their parts. Okay, enough about execution as we enter into the final 20 minutes, where I'm gonna be honest, feels really rushed. The pacing throughout the middle of the movie has been almost seamless, but how Elf starts and ends feels way too fast. Anyway, Michael shows up to Walter's job during a meeting, and to the dismay of his boss, he finally decides to put his family first and quits his job after his boss gave him an ultimatum. Cut back to Buddy, where he sees Santa crash into New York City, noting that the sleigh was powered by Christmas spirit as established by Papa Elf early in the movie. The news catches wind of the crash, which catches the attention of Jovi, and Santa, when he meets up with Buddy, knows that he should be the only one working on the sleigh. And while his confidence is driven back, he finally reconciles with his dad, and also the threat of Central Park Rangers who are on the naughty list. Walter and Michael help out by Michael taking Santa's list as a way to prove Santa's real to lift up Christmas spirit, and Walter borrowing Santa's suit to guide the Rangers away, which didn't really work, but hey, I appreciate the effort. Michael goes to the newscaster in town and begins reading the list, which is followed by Jovi finding him and helping him by remembering what Buddy told her when they first met.
The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear.
She conquers her stage fright by singing Santa Claus is Coming to Town in front of a few hundred people, which results in the crowd slowly joining her, and then following up, anyone who saw the newscast also sings the song, from Walter's former co-workers, the mailroom employees, to even the Gimbals workers all joining in, which gets the sleigh to fly. After the engine broke off the sleigh, both Buddy and Santa are unsure if they're going to make the flight happen, because one person in the crowd was hesitant to sing, which of course was Walter. After being called out by his son, Walter joins in and the sleigh is airborne. And for early 2000s CGI, I'm surprised it held up this well. As the sleigh flies off, Buddy temporarily says bye to his family and Jovi as he is headed back to the North Pole. Cut to a year in the future, Buddy's family is together for Christmas. Walter starts his own publishing company with Buddy, and he publicizes his journey to New York. And the movie ends with both Buddy and Jovi visiting Papa Elf at the North Pole with their new daughter, Susie. I didn't know why I didn't know about this earlier. She's named after Buddy's biological mother. And that's it. That was Elf. Are there moments where the jokes can have their bad sides? Yes. Is the movie really bland and predictable in some spots? Also yes. But is Elf also executed well while still having good comedy, great acting, wonderful effects, and an overall fun experience? For damn sure. So yes, to answer the question, Elf definitely holds up. It for sure has some moments that are not so great, and could be considered a little dated in some spots, but as a whole, Elf is still a really good movie in my eyes. Definitely one of the movies I check out at least once a year during the holidays. I'm personally more keen to watch Christmas Vacation, Klaus, or Home Alone over this, but I would put this movie over other classics like The Santa Claus, Polar Express, and the way overplayed A Christmas Story. If I had to give this movie a rating, I'd say, even with its more detrimental faults, I'd give Elf a solid 8 out of 10. It wasn't amazing, but it was for sure a great watch. And thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you guys in an ALBO episode soon that isn't like way into the future, but we'll see what happens. Okay, bye.